Hello, everyone. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives, and welcome to David Cranmer Underdown. It's great to have you back again, David, and looking forward to delving into some very timely matters that maybe you and I haven't talked about before. I gave you a hint about them before we started the show, so it's not going to hit you totally cold, but I'm going to ask your opinion about a couple of things. Well, let me say hello to the folks first. Hi, Mobster, Corky, Gary, and 16 other people who are here already. Welcome. Thanks again to everyone for being here tonight, or wherever you are, what time it is. I guess everyone's um, probably about the same as me. What time zone are you in, Corky? You're with me, right? And Gary and Mobster? All right. Well,
Yep.
David's here, and I know, David, you're in my time zone. Right? Isn't Michigan the same as Maryland?
It sure is. And a lot of people at Boston College couldn't believe that Michigan was part of the Eastern time zone. It was just a big shock. But
Yeah.
the border is kind of goes through Lake Michigan. So between Illinois and Michigan, and of course, Indiana and Illinois border, sort of the cutoff.
All right. Well, down to business. As a lot of people know, I've been kind of a lurker on different weather modification channels and have spent some time at it. Actually, before I even started doing this stuff, I was already suspicious of what's going on up there in the sky and taking pictures of these incredibly long and detailed contrails that seem to linger forever. And with a real bit of concern about what's going on up there. Not having any expertise, not being a pilot, and the first thing I thought was, geez, I wish I could go up there with a balloon or something and grab some of this stuff and bring it to a lab and say, here, tell me what's in this because I really need to know. But as far as I know, that hasn't actually been done yet. But other people, have inferred from rainwater samples, for instance, that there's uh, various metals, many of them toxic, that are being nano-sized, being dropped from somewhere. But we don't have any specifics of it. If it is going on, it's a very, very secret thing, and they probably put out a bunch of disinformation to try to get us confused before we ever get anywhere near to the subject. However, I've been persevering, and my favorite person to watch right now goes by the handle of One Pacific Redwood. And I hadn't seen him in a few months, and I just happened to be flipping around channels, and there I saw he has an interesting one up on his channel, and I'm going to go ahead and bring that up to the board. It's called One Pacific Redwood on YouTube, and this is his channel, and it is captioned Ian's rotation jump started by satellite transmitter. Storm is scheduled to hammer Florida, and it's dated September the 25th of 2022. So today is the 28th, and it is right now hammering Florida. Now, I am really, really uh, impressed by this man's ability as just a meteorologist, a weatherman. He's somebody that could be doing the weather on any channel. He's really, really knows the details of it and what pressure does. And so let's just, if you don't mind, listen to a couple of minutes of this, because he is saying that Ian was a storm created by by man's manipulation of nature. And specifically, he's saying that there are satellite transmitters that are sending either microwaves or lasers or something that's causing heat to interfere, or in this case, to magnify the danger of a storm. So that's enough intro from me. Let me maximize the screen and let's play it.
2022, and right now at 1:30 p.m. we have a temperature of 88 degrees. It's actually 89 now here in the foothills of Los Angeles. The barometric pressure is 30.03 inches. We have relative humidity of 32%. The dew point is 54.6 degrees, and we have clear skies. We're having another heat wave, which is just getting started. We had, I think it was around 95 yesterday. It was 95 degrees. Tomorrow it's supposed to be hotter, and Tuesday even hotter than that. So that's what's happening here in the Los Angeles area. All right, so right now we're looking at tropical storm, not Fiona, but this is Ian, still down in the Caribbean Sea. And we can see here on this loop how the rotation gets started. So in the beginning of the loop, let's just back it up. We can see that this is a giant rising air mass right here. There's no.
Now, I'll just interrupt to let you know that the color coding is that the black is the highest. It's something, this is like one of those really high thunderstorms rising up. So that's a storm that exists there as these events start to happen.
Rotation, and it's hit. Suddenly we can see that around the edges. We begin to see a.
Okay, around the edges, I stopped it so that you can see what he's going to call icicles. And I think you can see them, especially going out like 90 degrees to the left, and also down and out really in what looks like a blast pattern.
Pressure wave move out. Let's back it up again. You can see that pressure wave. You can see that pressure wave move out. We have the icicle pattern, and it's hit several different times around the edges, and suddenly we get rotation. And that's how these demon weather controllers are able to take an area of low pressure and thunderstorms and hit it on the outskirts, which is descending clockwise air, and that begins this area spinning clockwise, which is exactly how you start a cyclone. You get a vortex spinning, and the vortex is allowed to spool up, and this one is supposed to be a category 4. They're going to let it get to category 4, maybe even 5 status, and run it right up into someplace in Florida. It's not sure yet, but the entire west coast of Florida is going to get hammered, probably from about Fort Minor up through Tampa and all the way up along the Panhandle will be hit pretty hard, especially these areas right on the right side of that vortex, the eye wall. And there's going to be a lot of flooding in Tampa. If we look at the, let's just zoom in here. This is the Doppler map, but if we zoom in, look at the situation here. This is an inlet, and all that, if that eye wall gets near this area, it's going to pull a lot of water into this bay area. We've got 2 big bays. All these low-lying areas are going to be really flooded. So that's a concern, I think it's been 100 years since a hurricane has actually hit Tampa, Florida. And Governor DeSantis is from Dunedin, which is right just north of Clearwater. There's Dunedin right there. This could be a message from the deep state to just don't get too don't be sending busloads of immigrants up to our enclaves up in Martha's Vineyard. But we like DeSantis. He's a freedom lover, and he's trying to run a good state. People are moving there for a lot of reasons. And so, but anyway, this is going to be a damaging hurricane. Now, the other thing is the next rad, that is the WSR 88Ds. Here's a map of the WSR.
All right, I won't get into the next rad and the WSR 88Ds right now. Those of you who have been watching various weather channels will understand that these are weather radars that are also useful as actual transmitters. So the theory that these are involved in steering storms is, the short answer. So I've watched it a few times. I don't know if you were able to see the rotation that he was pointing out, but given the fact that our skies are starting to get filled with satellites, Starlink being the most recent one, and they put up 10 or 12 of them at a time now. And sure, I'm sure that Elon Musk is a great guy and he would never want to do anything that would hurt anybody. Just wants to facilitate the transmission of important information and data, and I like that kind of satellite. But there's also a space force. There's also all kinds of secret stuff still going on. We don't even know what went on in Area 51 yet, and that stuff's more than 50 years old. So there's reason to consider what One Pacific Redwood is saying, not just because I've been watching him for about 3 years, and I think he has a lot of credibility, but also um, this tension, this horrible tension in our country right now between DeSantis and say a Cuomo or any of the traditional liberal establishment folks is very, very serious. And it's possible. Oh, now it's also possible that it could be a foreign country. It could be somebody else. It could be China. It could be Russia. It could be, anybody that has this secret technology, which who knows whether they do it or not. But the theory will then, if you start watching this stuff, you start getting interested in other storms like Katrina and other ones. If you buy the idea that, yeah, that they, by heating up this end and turning on this radar, they can cause that storm to instead of going this way to go that way. But this is the first time that I've ever really seen with my own eyes in a what is an image from NOAA, I believe, an impeccably sourced images, that I can see this storm that is now ravaging Florida exactly as he predicted. I can see it from that, just a big rainstorm. I can see it start to spin, and I can see the icicles coming out, and I can perceive the idea that yeah, maybe this is weather warfare. So anyway, I'm very curious to hear your reaction.
Well, like a lot of things, I wish my grandpa was still alive because I feel like he was an expert in radio and he worked for RCA. So I'm always, you know, anytime you get into the weather modification or the weather weapons, things like that, like I'm open minded to all of it. But I also always try to remember that the people that really were on the Area 51 was Richard Bissell and Alan Dulles and the one of the what's the cabal, the other cabal, that Charles, that was those were the guys that were really in on the sort of the CIA's version of it. One of the things I was looking
Cabell, I think he pronounces it Cabell, but
Cab okay, yeah,
Cabell
yeah.
is the name. Yeah.
So I look at those are the characters, and they certainly were, involved in all of the most top secret programs and different different weapons and things like that. I try not, I just try to be open minded because I again, like, I don't have, I'm not privy to information. I can certainly just even at dinner tonight, my sister was texting me telling about, her friend lives in Orlando, and my mom has a bunch of friends that are down in Naples, and they're all, saying it's terrible down there right now. And so I don't know. I mean, I try to be open minded to the fact that, that that is that that a lot of what the CIA's mission is to have plausible deniability. So to say that it's a an act of God is a very perfect plausible deniability excuse. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience in meteorology or in radar or laser technology. So I don't know. I mean, I look at it, but I don't really have I don't feel like can really I can give opinions on things, but I don't feel like I have um a great handle on that stuff. I mean, it
Oh,
honestly think of like the Mark Kulak debate. Is there really technically a nuclear weapon? Is that or do they just use a more conventional explosion and say that it's a nuclear or a hydrogen bomb, and then use that for basically unlimited budget and unlimited security to run other programs. But maybe they're running things like this, like a weather modification, or even learning about like Zapata oil with their oil rigs. I know they use those rigs for signal comms for the Bay of Pigs, but were they running other things? Are they able to use radar on those oil platforms to do things like what you're suggesting, where they can enhance the storm or create it? I don't know. I feel like that's the type of thing I just don't feel like I'm an expert in that area.
well, I fair enough, and I won't press you on it, but I did want to know just whether just a first impression. Um, for instance, let me just ask you one last question and let it go. Did you see the vortex start to spin?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've seen it. I mean, the thing too though is that I'm also like skeptical about Ron DeSantis. Like the
oh
fact,
well, okay.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that was a big point that he made, was that Ron DeSantis's hometown was, in the eye of the storm, and that he had just recently sent, people up to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical because DeSantis was a JAG lawyer at Guantanamo under the leadership of Harry Harris, who we've done a lot of research on, being out in Korea and sending the test kits. So I'm not sold on DeSantis. Like, to me, that's a huge, huge question mark to me. I have not followed him closely. I know George said that he and Addie went down there to meet with oh my gosh, I can't think of her name, but they did the program where he got the book and really worked to get the vaccine passport stuff changed. So again, like a lot of these characters, I just don't feel like I know enough to like know, but I'm always like a little bit skeptical when that's put in there. That's like almost a personal
Yeah.
attack.
Yeah, I actually wish I had stopped the video before he made his political comment, because he usually doesn't do that. I think he's just really particularly angry at what he sees as a constant uh, abuse of our weather for profit. Well, okay, next subject. Nord Stream. You and I have talked about Nord Stream. We've talked about Gerhard Schroeder and Rosneft and Gazprom, and but to try to keep all that straight in my head, I confess I don't have any any real sense of the territory the way that you do.
Yeah.
So let me get your perspective on the what I think clearly is a sabotage act of the Nord Stream pipeline. I think they might have done both of them. At least they did the new one, Nord Stream 2.
Yeah.
And let me get your view on that, please.
Well, what George Webb reported earlier resonated a lot with me, talking about the East Med pipeline and the Genie Energy people sort of using the same plays that they did for the oil crisis in '72, where they cut the oil supply from one vendor, being the Russian source, and instead they're going to get you know, huge price increases to send oil from the what's it called, the Leviathan in the Mediterranean, and
Yeah.
sending gas up through Europe through the East Med pipeline. You know, that resonated a lot with me. Again, I don't. It's hard for me to, because again, like I look at who's the partners in Genie. You know, you've got Jacob Rothschild as a partner in that, with like Dick Cheney and Jim Woolsey, Rupert Murdoch. You know, that's the Genie Energy Consortium. And then you look at like Rosneft. Well, Jacob Rothschild's one of the major shareholders in Rosneft also. So it's like, well, you know, is that what they're doing? Is they're just playing with supply to basically terrify people, and then, you know, sell it, you know, with, instead of selling it through Russia, they're going to sell it through, you know, sort of a joint venture between, you know, Israel and not Malta, but Italy and Turkey, I think, is part of it. Like it's like these are all like joint venture deals. So I'm not sure. You know, I think that they talked about Nord Stream from the very beginning. I feel like when the war first broke out, that was one of the very first talking points, was we're going to cut off Nord Stream. We don't want to complete the Nord Stream 2. Those were all things that I feel like Blinken was talking about from literally the very beginning of the Russian-Ukraine conflict. So I feel like this has been teed up for a long time. So again, you know, it'll be interesting to see if George Webb's theory is correct, that this is going to be used as the pretext to do a grand bargain and a Marshall Plan to do the reconstruction of the Ukraine.
What I noticed was that there is a pipeline from Norway
Mm-hmm.
going to Poland now, and there's suddenly Poland becomes a player and may actually be part of what's going on here. I was thinking about Norway in the sense of, wow, they've got all that North Sea oil and they're so close to Germany. Why doesn't just Germany and Norway make a deal? What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think that they, again, like I've actually been to Norway, believe it or not. That was my grandpa. We let him pick where he wanted to go for his 60th anniversary, and he picked Norway. And again, it's like one of those kind of creepy, not creepy, but like it makes me think, like, you know, why, you know, what it was, because I know there's supposed to be a lot of NATO telecommunication. You know, I know the heavy water stuff was supposed to be a big thing from World War II, but I've heard that there's also a lot of telecom stuff there as well. But yeah, I think that I think they probably will make a deal. I mean, they say Norway is supposed to be one of the wealthiest countries per capita, like maybe the wealthiest country, and that a lot of it is because of that the North Sea oil deal. And of course, I think those are all you know, again, joint ventures with BP and Royal Dutch Shell, and I think Chevron, I think, is the American Standard Oil face or whatever. So yeah, I think they'll all be in there as far as but again, like, are they doing the price shocks? You know, I mean, we've got our famous price shocker of the day is Jeffrey Sachs from Harvard and now from Columbia, but and also through the United Nations. And he was, you know, very famous for using the price shock techniques that you've talked about before. And but his role currently is to be the head of the Lancet coronavirus task force. So you've got a guy that's historically been a economics, you know, sort of a Harvard School economics guy that has been sort of rebranded as the coronavirus skeptic. And so again, like I don't know, you know, I feel like I hate being like so cynical that you know, but as I said with Nord Stream in specific, not only do you have Gerhard Schroeder, who is a former chancellor of Germany, that's on the board of directors of not only Nord Stream, he's also on Gazprom, and he's also Rosneft, and he's also an agent for Rothschild Bank, which is it's Victor Rothschild's bank, his family bank, and you also have I think it's Waring, I think is his name, who is the director of Nord Stream, who was the guy that was Putin's contact at the Dresden Bank in the 80s. And he's the current chairman of Nord Stream, who is somebody that I think when Putin was the mayor of St. Petersburg, he had some security issues with his daughters. And he actually it was Marcus Waring is the guy's name. He sent his daughters to live with Marcus Waring. So again, there's these long histories of all these characters together, and I hate to say it, but it just seems like it really goes back to the old Brondable group of the Noble family, which is Swedish. You've got the Rothschilds in there, and then you have the Standard Oil of New Jersey. It seems like it's the same players. I mean, they've rebranded and have Genie Energy now or whatnot, or Rosneft instead of Brondable, but it just seems like it's the same groups. And so it comes down to me, if you already control all the assets, you control all the resources already, why are we going through all this? I don't, that's what it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, unless it's just another shakedown and, to get us all broke and take our property away from us and then turn us all into people who have to pay rent, and we'll all own nothing and we'll all be miserable. But that doesn't matter to them because they're the ones that deserve the money because they're the smart people.
But they already have it, though. I mean, if you're Jacob Rothschild and you're the majority shareholder of Rosneft, so you're, screwing your Russian asset, but guess what? We hedged and we've got Genie Energy, so we're gonna, sell at a massive premium through Genie instead. It's like, well, you didn't, and your family's owned a huge percentage of that going back over 100 years anyway. So it's like, why go through the process of having people scared that they're going to freeze to death or starve? I mean, I don't get it. It seems like it's that they've had control of these resources for a long time. It doesn't seem, I don't know, but again, I'm just just analyzing and trying to make sense of it, but it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, in that case, I'll add another layer on top to make it even more complicated.
Yeah.
So what is the role of Britain, the British Prime Minister? Boris Johnson, he's out, but he was the big player for a long time. Now we've got this Liz Truss that everybody thinks is pretty bad, but
Yeah.
and same question as to Biden. The overall question, I guess, is our topic last week was the idea of the Western economic system needing to have the war in Ukraine in order to keep Europe and Russia and Asia separated so that we could have all the markets in Europe and control them so that our financial system doesn't go under due to lack of business. So that what we're doing is we're pushing hard down on Europe to force them to swear off any interaction with Russia, and conversely to bind themselves to American and British corporations to supply their basic needs, energy, etc. That's a whole different dimension than from just talking about it as a wealth play by the Murdochs and the Genie Energy crowd. So how do you see that Rand Corporation type of analysis fit in with what you've just offered about Genie Energy?
Well, as far as England and Liz Truss, I mean, I don't follow it that closely. I mean, I thought that Boris was just kind of like, I hate to say it, like a little bit like a Biden character. It's somebody that's where it's almost like you can't believe that's the real person that's in that role. But just like even like the Partygate stuff and the lockdown. But Liz Truss, I mean, she's sort of famous for making like the silly comments, like when she was negotiating I think she was like their trade minister before, and she did the she broke off a negotiation with Japan over the Stilton cheese or whatever, and then she accidentally sent the BAE weapon systems to Saudi Arabia when they were supposed to be sanctioned, and like, oh shucks, like I'm not a good debater and whatnot. I don't know. I mean, it's it's interesting because obviously they're having obviously Queen Elizabeth passed away, and Charles III is now the king, and so you have sort of that transition, and then you've got the new prime minister who doesn't seem that forceful. So I don't know. I don't know what the I sadly I think a lot of it is the demoralization play. Like, just to think that there aren't good leaders, and there isn't a lot to be hopeful for the average person. Sadly, that's what I really think is going on. Is that it's just like you're so demoralized that you'll just be happy with anything. So when you have like a Klaus Schwab type offer of you're not going to have anything, but you'll have a nanny state, or some sort of a subsistence for like a socialist sort of stipend or a welfare state or whatever, that'll seem agreeable to people because the current situation is dire.
Yeah, what was the phrase you used? Demoralization play? It's
I think so. I mean, I really think that is what I think it is, the strategy of tension. I think that
yeah,
it has the Kissinger signature on it, just to make it so outrageously stupid. I mean, I think of like, I mean, even with the Saudi Arabian stuff, like they of course were a major factor in the oil shock and going off the gold standard in 72. I mean, that was sort of the petrodollar system, was an agreement to provide the Saudis with military hardware in exchange for them clearing petroleum sales in US dollars. And that was sort of the arrangement that was made by Henry Kissinger and Pete Peterson and George Shultz. Those were sort of the negotiators for that. William Simon, I think, was another guy that was a big negotiator in that deal. And it seems like it's sort of the same thing. But of course, I go to, our current problems with Saudi Arabia stemming from the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, our favorite Indiana State sycamore. How Jamal, who's the nephew of Adnan, who was the big, Lockheed weapons or Lockheed products, negotiator of the 60s and 70s, how his nephew becomes this martyred Washington Post reporter that again, it gets into the Jeff Bezos stuff and the stealing his naughty pictures off the phone, and MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, being blamed for not not only being so offended that Khashoggi wrote negative things about him in the Washington Post, that he stole Jeff Bezos's D-pics and murdered his writer. And we had the whole thing with Biden going to Saudi Arabia, and it was like, oh, should we go there? This guy's a terrorist. And Liz Truss is sending missile defense systems accidentally, like when they're not, they're supposed to be embargoed, and it's like, whoops, we still sent them. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like the again, like I don't think any of this, like anybody, like I think most people don't follow that or don't think of it that way, but you know, I certainly do, and like I feel like I'm a student of sort of these kind of overall themes like that, and I just like can't believe that's the reality of the world that we live in. You know, that's the that these are like the, you know, richest man. The characters are like, this is the richest man in the world, and this is the, you know, leader of Saudi Arabia and the prime minister of England. Like these are the characters we're talking about, and the stories are like horrible.
Yeah, yeah, that's Bezmenov, the Yuri Bezmenov, the Soviet man that lectured about demoralizing us is the real method, real mission of the KGB was, you know, not to, you know, steal our secrets so much, but to infiltrate our institutions in such a way that we just become demoralized. Now, who was behind the Soviet thing? Well, we've dug a lot behind that too. So, does it all go back to the same, you know, same financial interests that may well have started the whole Soviet thing? Anyway,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and in order to make us accept Klaus Schwab's deal, they get us so demoralized that we say, "Yes, I'll take the cubicle. Give me the Wi-Fi and the supercomputer, and with the great graphics. I want a nice graphics card."
Or the metaverse.
Yeah, and the yeah, I want the metaverse. You know, I want all that stuff. You know, and I want to be comfortable. And if I start having aches and pains, I want you to give me some good drugs right away. I don't want to have to go to no goddamn doctor. Just shoot it right through me, and you know, just take care of me to make sure I'm comfortable. And yeah, please take my data. I don't care. I don't need any privacy. That's, you know, what's that good? I'm just going to live in a computer cubicle the rest of my life, and I'll be happy because I'll know that I couldn't possibly have done any better. Um, that's demoralizing, all right. Well, you look around and you say, well, where's the productivity anymore? Where's anybody actually building anything and doing anything? And I don't see it. They really are trying to. It,
I
I
mean,
guess. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you and I both personally live in areas that have really been affected. Like, I know you're in the sort of the DC and the Baltimore area. And I think that Detroit and Cleveland and Baltimore and DC were really specifically targeted places that were once like manufacturing anchors of our country that have been really just, I mean, and
Well,
again, it's hard.
Baltimore for sure.
I live in an oasis. Like the area that I live is absolutely a beautiful community. It's nice. But if you go to downtown Detroit, there are pockets that have been redeveloped, but there's a lot of blight and there's a lot like I mean, I you know, as you know, like when we were talking last time about you know, Albert Kahn and William Knutson, and they're literally ramping up our productivity for war, and they're creating this incredible war machine by building these huge factories never seen before. And you know, I can drive by them. I mean, like you know, we were just talking about well, in the book, the biography about Khan, it, you know, it talked a lot about the Packard factory, which in its day was the largest manufacturing facility in the world. And that was where they made like the, you know, the V12 Liberty engines for the, you know, the airplanes and all this stuff. And it's like now, like it's they're it's been vacant for I think 30 or 40 years now, and it's just like so dilapidated, and the city has condemned it. And to think that that went from being the you know, a crown jewel of a manufacturing nation to being just like literally just a completely dilapidated, rotted factory. that's what I have seen, and it makes me very sad. I mean, and that is partly like when I do my analysis of these characters, it doesn't seem possible because all I've known is sort of this kind of overwhelming feeling of loss and sadness, and like, you know, what was it like when it was in its heyday? Like I didn't ever see it.
Hmm.
But
Interesting.
yeah, I because like even like reading about Fort Myers, which is an area that's just getting hammered right now, as as mentioned in that video, but also a lot of the reporting is talking about Fort Myers and the flooding. And I didn't know that was where Edison and Ford used to go. That was where they would have their Florida places, was in Fort Myers. And I should have known that because I know George and Andy went down there and they went to the labs and stuff. But then, of course, that always gets me into thinking like I didn't realize and I should have known this because of the owner of the Lions was Martha Ford, and she's Martha Firestone Ford. But I'd forgotten that all the Fords had like intermarried with the Firestones, and Firestone was part of Drexel, Burnham, and Lambert, and all this stuff. And so, like, that's the way that my mind works on this stuff. Like, I don't, it's hard that it is just hard to believe that we had that, even Willow Run. I went to Willow Run with George and showed it to him, and it used to be a mile long assembly line. It was the largest um war manufacturing facility in the world, and it's been bulldozed. It's gone now. There's nothing there. It's just an airstrip, and there's a small little museum. There's a couple hangars, but this was, it had all the PR. It had Rosie the Riveter. It had the branding. It had all the an airplane, B-24 every hour they could build it or whatever. I mean, that, and again, like all that stuff has just been sort of wiped off the map. And so like when I look at this, the Russia, like, of course, I always think to the fact that they ended the Soviet Union in 98. Who was kind of in the mix. I talked about Jeffrey Sachs. He was one of the major guys with like Larry Summers and, these different kind of Wall Street interests that went in there. So, whenever you hear Putin is this strong man and he's, this nationalist or whatever, like that all may be true, but they also nationalized a lot of the industries in that era too. I mean, again, like they created sort of an oligarch system, but who were the people that were buying up all those assets? It was Jacob Rothschild. It was Oleg Deripaska. It was Roman Abramoff. It was, the Alpha Bank guys that were kind of in the Trump Russian hacking story. And again, like it is sort of the same character. So I don't look at, I mean, I'm very empathetic to Russia overall because I feel like they had such horrible loss during World War II, and then also the starvations and stuff. So I don't know. It's very hard for me to get into the not feel bad for countries that have had like massive loss like that, even if their behavior is terrible now. So, but still, I mean, I try to keep that in mind.
Well, in Russia's case, they're under some really severe sanctions and have been for a long time. And there's just no goodwill between Russia and the Western economy anymore. So there's no chance that it's going to improve. It can't pull itself up by its own bootstraps. And plus it's fighting this special military operation, quote unquote. So all the, Russia is never been able to just develop on its own. Even, you've documented it with George P. Schultz and the whole Arm and Hammer we talked about last week. Or it's not it. And, I thought it was interesting to hear Harley Schlanger this past Tuesday in our show say that he agreed that Germany is not a fully sovereign country. As a matter of fact, it's It hasn't been since World War II. And I think that's one of the big points that our research has shown, is that between Dulles and Reinhard Gehlen, uh, the CIA, OSS, OPC, CIA has controlled West Germany ever since the war, and in a way of colluding with former Nazis that would be shocking to the American people if we hadn't already been so demoralized through the Boris Johnson and all the, clown show that we're subjected to 24/7. Yeah, we should be outraged at that, but no, we haven't got a media that's going to tell everybody, and we haven't got history books that are written by real historians. They're just putting together a narrative. It's like somebody told Edward Bernays, you hire the historians, but make up a narrative. We don't need to know the truth. Just, don't tell me the truth.
Well, it's, I have to say that, the more I'm studying this stuff, the more I really think that I am onto something with this Michigan bank holiday with the Fords. Um,
Absolutely.
The other one that really was a very interesting find for me today was that John Foster Dulles was one of the key brokers in the Kruger crash. When Ivar Kruger, when they crashed, the Wallenbergs they were sort of doing the shell game where they were using the Dutch banks, and nobody wanted to hold the Bosch assets from World War One. Germany was radioactive. They had made Kaiser Wilhelm like the great war criminal, and the reparations were sort of decided at the Treaty of Versailles, which of course Robert Lansing, and we've talked about Edwin Mandell House sort of being these negotiators for what became the Dawes Plan and then the Young Plan. And Owen Young is always a very interesting character to me, because he was a General Electric guy that was the founder of RCA, and he was working with Thomas Lamont and J.P. Morgan Jr. to create this Young Plan, which was basically the reparations of World War II. So again, like, that was where all these Harriman interests were coming in, and Sullivan and Cromwell was like the lawyers for that. So that's like something that I always try to like keep clear, is that there's the financial banking end, but there's also the legal side that's going to be engaged in these transactions. And that was very interesting to me, because again, the Krugers, it was Kruger and Toll was the name of their construction company in Europe. It wasn't just the matchstick king, with his phosphate, but he had partnered with the Albert Kahn and Julius Kahn, and that breakup after Ivar Kruger is supposedly murdered is distributed by it has to do with the Bosch assets, which is the auto part, sort of the auto parts and of Germany. But also it was John Foster Dulles was in there, and he of course Sullivan and Cromwell, as you've done a lot of work on, they have this like long history with the Panama, going back to the 19th century, the Panama Canal. They're the United Fruit Company. They're, all these different interests, and they really tie in a lot of the things. And that's the thing, is that we talk a lot about Allen Dulles and the CIA, but John Foster and the State Department was really doing a lot too. I know they sort of had like they worked in tandem, obviously, but it's just always interesting. And then like with, Averell Harriman's role in a lot of these banking deals, and with Brown Brothers Harriman, I think everybody always just goes right to the Bushes. But, I was looking at one of the things I've been doing this week is I've discovered that some of George Webb's old videos are on YouTube. So I've been watching the old, because I never watched his like original report. So I've been sort of doing those, and he's been talking a lot about DynCorp, which was the is sort of an old like aviation service contract that did a lot of stuff with the Air Force, and they do a lot of like maintenance and contracts with like Navy bases and Army bases and NASA bases and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they were started at the an airstrip in Fort Worth, Texas, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was where American Airline was originally. And I didn't realize that like American was originally Juan Trippe. I knew he was Pan Am, and he was a Skull and Bones, and he was, buddies with William Rockefeller and with the Harrimans and the Bushes and all these guys. But, just like going, like, I feel like a lot of people have the sense, that Brown Brothers Harriman was, had very tight relationships with Fritz Thyssen and with the, German interests overall. But there's a lot of angles to it. I mean, there's a lot there besides just saying, oh, the Bushes are, I mean, granted, yeah, they had, two presidents, from their family, but they were also really, they were, they have a long, Prescott and those guys, they're very much like old intelligence, like really like the Dulles in many ways too.
I don't know about Prescott Bush in intelligence. Tell me a little bit why you say that.
Well, I thought that Prescott, who, of course he was a partner at Brown Brothers, and then he became a senator from Connecticut. But I thought he was doing a lot of stuff on Jupiter Island, and that was where I'm trying to think who I need to review Prescott more, but I know he he was the roommate of Bunny Harriman at Yale, and so I don't know. I guess I'm not like part of what my trying to understand is that with the Zapata oil also is a big one for me, because that one has the it has the Harrimans, it has the Bushes, but it also has Eugene Mayer and his son-in-law Philip Graham. But they were partners with the person I think is potentially is my relative, is William Pauley, and that's always somebody that's an interesting character to me, because he was a Pan American Oil with Doheny, and he then was going to become Secretary of Navy, but Harold Ickes threw the whammy on him, and so then instead he left the government and then went to become the chancellor of the California school system, which is again like a very interesting, because you've got all of your Lawrence Livermores and all the riots of the peace movement and protests of Vietnam, and he was the chancellor of the California schools during all that stuff, and supposedly worked with Reagan when he was the governor and all of that. So those are things that like I don't know why. Again, like I just feel like my specific family, like my grandpa especially, I just think that he was somebody that just kept his mouth shut on a lot of this stuff, and
Yeah.
knew a lot more than I wish. And like I said in the beginning, I wish he was around now so I could ask him questions. I mean, he's been gone for quite a while now, but his whole career is fascinating to me, because he again is like, you just don't think of Bloomington, Indiana as being anything, but like as I've said a lot, like the more I go through these different, I'm trying to think who the person was. I'll have to look because I didn't post it. I just saw it, but that whole, we were talking about this demoralization and, the whole, Aldous Huxley with the Brave New World idea. That's what I really, that's what I sadly think is the model. I mean, I know you've talked about Isaac Asimov and, how influential he was to different people in these, information services or, psychological warfare groups. But, Julian Huxley, the fact that he recruited Hermann Muller and that Muller lived next door to my mom growing up is just, it's just hard for me to believe.
Yeah. Well, so many interesting characters, and you have an amazing ability to tie them all together for us, and I sure do appreciate it, David. Um, we'll be back next Wednesday for a trio with David and Mark Kulak of Housatonic Live. So I'm really looking forward to that. Our little trios on Wednesday nights are some of our most popular shows here at McDuff Lives. So thank you all for being with us tonight, and special thanks to David Cranmer, Underdown, once again. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.